Hello everybody and welcome. Today I have two different hardtail eMTBs, the Aventon Ramblas and the Trek Marlin Plus. Both are great in their own right and they seem to have plenty of overlap, but actually they have wildly different personalities. Let's find out which one is better for you in today's head-to-head e-bike comparison. Welcome into Electric Bike Report. Today we are comparing these two e-bikes here, but we've got more in the works by audience request, so make sure to subscribe to the channel to see if the two e-bikes that you've been eyeballing are in the next head-to-head. Before we see how they did in our testing, let's cover all of their basics and see what you get for the dollar that you spend. The Aventon Ramblas here, as of this filming, has an MSRP of $26.99. It is a Class 1 electric bike with pedal assist up to 20 miles per hour. Now the motor is made by Aventon in partnership with a brand called Go. It is a 36 volt, 250 watt mid-drive with 750 peak watts and a whopping 100 Newton meters of torque. It comes with a 706 watt hour battery running off of LG cells, and all of the electrical is in accordance with UL 2849. There is a 12 gear SRAM Eagle SXNX mixed drivetrain. There's a 34 tooth chainring up front with an 11 to 50 tooth gear range from the cassette. The fork is a RockShox 35 Silver. It is a coil fork with 130 millimeters of travel. The Ramblas also has 4-piston hydraulic disc brakes with a 200 millimeter rotor up front and a 180 millimeter rotor in the rear. The tires are 27.5 or 29 by 2.4 inch Maxxis Recon tires. Sizing changes depending on which of the 4 frame sizes that you choose from. And it comes with either 125 or 150 millimeter dropper post and a 720 or 760 mil handlebar. There is a small display and the bike does have a companion app for adjusting some of the power settings. The head tube is 66.5 degrees while the seat tube is 74.5 degrees. And finally, the frame is made from aluminum. It weighs 50.2 pounds on our scales, and our test bike is the large, by the way, and it is available in 2 different color options, either a green or a purple. All right, let's jump over to the Marlin Plus's side of things now, but bear in mind that there are 2 different spec levels of this bike. Now, we tested out and are comparing the Marlin Plus 8, but there is also the Marlin Plus 6 as well with lower spec and a lower price to match. So the Marlin Plus 8, as of this filming, has an MSRP of $34.99. It's a Class 1 electric bike with pedal assist up to 20 miles per hour. The motor is the Bosch Active Line Plus. It is a 36 volt, 250 watt mid-drive with 600 peak watts and 50 Newton meters of torque. It comes with a 400 watt hour Bosch compact tube battery. And of course, all of the electrical is up to UL 2849 certifications. Now there is a 12 gear Shimano Dior M6100 group set. It has a 32 tooth chainring paired with a 10 to 51 tooth cassette. The fork is the RockShox Recon Silver Air Fork with either 100 or 120 millimeters of travel, depending on which of the 5 available frame sizes that you choose from. The Marlin Plus has 4-piston hydraulic disc brakes with 203 millimeter rotors front and rear. Now the tires are Bontrager Gunnison Pro XR, either 27.5 or 29 by 2.6 inches. It comes with a Trans X dropper post with either 100 or 150 millimeters of travel and a 720 or 750 mil handlebar. There is a Bosch Purion display, but there is also the ability to connect your phone to the Bosch Flow app and turn it into a larger display if you like. The head tube is 66.5 degrees and the effective seat tube angle is 74 degrees. And finally, the frame is aluminum. It weighs 49.2 pounds on our scales, and our test bike is once again the large frame. It's available in 2 different colors, either a silver or the purple one we have here. So both bikes have pretty nice and honestly comparable specs, but now let's see how each holds up across our testing. The hill where we test all of our e-bikes is called the Hellhole, a charming and fitting name that matches its 3rd mile distance and 12% average grade. So take a look and see how both of these bikes did climbing up the hill.
Okay, so on the Aventon Ramblas on Hellhole, and I've been really stoked to get this out here to see how this motor that Aventon made with Go. I hope I pronounced that correctly. 750 watts, but 100 Newton meters of torque. So I want to see how it does on this hill versus the Bosch, versus the Shimano, the Bafang, some of the other ones. So far it feels pretty powerful. I haven't had to shift at all, It isn't turbo. I'm trying to keep the pedaling even as I did on all the other mid-drive eMTBs. Let's just listen to it through this next section on this steep part. So yeah, held 13.2 miles an hour through there. Motor feels pretty consistent, pretty smooth. The noise level, it kind of sounds almost like a Bosch to me, where there's a whine. You kind of lose it in the background as you're riding, but you can't hear it. It is definitely louder than like the Specialized 2.2 motor. And so, definitely climbs well. Let's go to the tape and see how this compares to the other brands. Okay, out on Hellhole with the Trek Marlin Plus 8. Stoked to get this out here to see how this Bosch Activeline Plus mid-drive motor does. It's got 50 Newton meters of torque, so it's definitely torqued down from their performance line, which is partly why Trek's able to do this at such a good price. And again, we'll see how it does. So right now down about 6-7 miles per hour through this section. Downshifted a couple times. Motor's incredibly quiet. I was expecting a little bit more noise-wise, but feels pretty good so far. Definitely not as powerful as the performance line climbing a hill, but it's not supposed to be either. So it feels pretty good. I'll let you listen to it, if you can hear it at all, through this next section. So yeah, only when I really start getting the cadence up there can you really hear it. Feels pretty decent, very natural. I know, given how I've ridden this up this trail without assist, how hard it is. This is definitely helping, but it feels nice and natural, smooth, and curious to see how it compares. So let's go to the tape and check the numbers.
Okay, so the Ramblas had one of the fastest times we've ever seen on a mid-drive motor. It finished with a time of 1 minute and 16 seconds, which means it averaged 14.7 miles per hour up the hill. The Marlin Plus finished with a climb time of 1 minute and 48 seconds with an average speed of 10 miles per hour. Slower, but still respectable. This test wasn't all that surprising. The motor with the more stuff was the faster one. The Ramblas has twice the torque and a higher peak output. It delivered the faster time, which in all honesty was to be expected. So does that make the Marlin bad? No, not at all. Remember, the Marlin here was actually designed specifically to give you a boost and not meant to blast off. So in the riding I've done on these bikes on mountain bike trails, I came to appreciate that the Ramblas had the ability to get me up almost anything, but sometimes it could overboost me just slightly. The Marlin had me working a little bit harder on steeper climbs, but its engagement was terrific. Both were good here in separate ways, but now let's see how they do with the battery range. So we tested both bikes' battery capabilities to help determine the mileage that you can get in either high or low power settings. So while testing both bikes out on our local city paths, the Ramblas went for 47.5 miles on max assistance and 107.4 miles when we did the low assistance test. The Trek was able to go 30.7 miles on max power and 71.1 miles on minimum power. And it is worth pointing out that on eMTB trails, your mileage would likely be less. The range results were a lot like the hill test results. The bike with the bigger battery had the better result, but further analysis had me appreciating both of them in different ways. The Ramblas achieved the 5th longest min and max tests we've ever recorded across more than 260 bikes that we've done this for. With a motor that I think of as quick and powerful, I was surprised it didn't burn through the battery quickly too. Now on the other hand, the Marlin Plus was impressive in its own right. When looking at which bike is most efficient based on the mileage it achieved and the battery size that it comes with, or in other words, miles divided by watt hours, the Marlin had the 8th best min result and 14th best max result that we've ever had. The Ramblas had the 15th and 32nd best results respectively. So the Ramblas wins for total mileage, but the Marlin here is the more efficient system overall, and the smaller battery size that it comes with makes the bike's weight a little bit lower, so it's a trade-off you get for slightly better handling. So another standard test that we run is a speed test where we measure the power output of each level as it ships to you. Let's break down the speeds I got on each bike's 3 different levels. The Ramblas can be pedaled on a flat course at a reasonable pace of 9.3 miles per hour. Once the motor kicked on, I started going 13.5 miles per hour in Eco, up to 15.2 in Tour, and all the way to 20.3 in Sport mode. Now with the Marlin, it was a little easier to pedal with no motor as I went about 11 miles per hour. Eco mode jumped me up to 12.8 miles per hour, then 15.2 in Tour Plus, and I hit around 19.3 miles per hour in Turbo. The Marlin also has an auto mode that didn't really fit into this testing, but it allows for a bit more differentiation than the traditional low, medium, and high setting. It's more like a set it and forget it mode. So this test has a couple of things that I have to point out. Both bikes have an app where you can actually tailor the speeds of each level, so while the out-of-the-box settings made me happy as they each felt distinct on both bikes, you can make them what you want really. Now for me, the takeaway from the speed test was further evidence of each bike's personality. One is a speedster and one is a crazy dialed in experience. The Ramblas seem to have more ready acceleration. I felt like I could get going faster in a hurry. The Marlin, on the other hand, took home the distinction of being one of the most seamless motors I have ever tested. The first 2 PAS settings are nuts. I couldn't hear the motor over the road noise. If I didn't see the speedometer showing faster speed, I would not really have known it was working. Like seriously, it follows your cadence in a great way. Okay, it is time for the nitty-gritty. We have talked specs, we have looked at test results. Now it's time to hold my feet to the fire and hand out category award winners, and I've got 6 of those to dish out. Just remember, picking one over the other isn't to say that there's a good one and a bad one. In almost all cases, it feels like one of them won by an inch. Now, first up is specs. This was one of the harder categories for me to assign, but I'm giving it to the Trek Marlin. Most of the specs on these 2 bikes are pretty similar. The drivetrain, the brakes, and tires were all fairly comparable even though they come from different brands. I think the Marlin had one clear winner though, and that was the fork. The air fork on this one just felt better to me. It had good stiffness and control, and well, I could adjust it. The Ramblas' coil fork felt good, but there was no compression adjustment, which was a drawback. Next up, we have our first motor award, and this is for how the motor handles speed and engagement. I gave this to the Marlin by a nose. This could be a divisive one, but for me, I've ridden enough mid-drives to appreciate the marginal differences in feel, and the Bosch motor here just feels more dialed into me. I like that there was never any motor overrun. Now in our next category, that goes for hill climbing, and well, this was pretty easy. I gave that to the Ramblas. The motor will once again be a preference thing. You either want all the power or maybe you like a well-calibrated boost. I like the extra power on tap, so the Ramblas gets on the board here. Next up is range. Again, this felt like a bit of an easy choice. The Ramblas had one of our longest range tests we have ever had, and it did it while boosting the rider several miles per hour the whole time. Not only that, but I appreciate that it has the higher floor value with nearly 50 miles on max power. For the 5th award, we have ride quality. This one goes to Trek. The Ramblas in a vacuum is a good ride with a nice feel out on the trails. But as I rode these bikes back to back and back to back, looking for their differences, I often had the thought of, I wish the Ramblas had the Marlin's fork. It's a thought that came to me several times. It just felt more comfortable, and that had a very big impact on the overall feeling on the trails. And for the 6th and final category, value for the money. This one goes to the Ramblas. As of this filming, there is an $800 price difference between these 2 bikes. Trek has some built-in advantages, the dealer network and easier access to service, plus the prestige of the Bosch motor are all worth the money. But for me, the Ramblas had comparable specs across the board except for maybe the fork, and it had more battery life too, so I feel the value is a little bit better with Aventon. Look, if you asked me 100 days in a row, hey Griffin, the Aventon Ramblas or the Trek Marlin Plus, which do you think is better? I would likely split 50-50 in terms of a response. Some days it felt like the Marlin was better, and some days I would take the Ramblas. So I really think that it comes down to their defining characteristics and asking yourself what aligns more with what you're looking for. The Ramblas here has terrific power and range for days. The spec sheet goes toe-to-toe with the Marlin Plus 8 in nearly every respect save for the fork. But you're spending $800 less, so something had to give, and in all likelihood, you can upgrade that fork to something similar or even better. it's got great value for what you're buying. The Marlin Plus 8 has the dialed-in feel you'd expect from a brand that's been in this game as long as Trek has, and for as long as Bosch has too, for that matter. It's a bit more comfortable and adjustable. It has 5 frames instead of 4 to pick from for a better fit. Is it more expensive? Yep. But it also means you have an expansive network of Trek mechanics nearby who can help come service time. So since I don't think you can really go wrong, I'm mostly curious to know, which one would you pick? Let me know in the comments below, and if you do go to buy one, it helps out the channel if you make a purchase after clicking the links in the video description. Again, I'm Griffin with Electric Bike Report, and this was the Aventon Ramblas versus the Trek Marlin Plus.